Welcome to the Cambridge Financial Podcast with Bert Salazar, CEO at Cambridge Financial Partners, LLC. This podcast is all about tax-preferred retirement planning, economics, financial risk management, and achieving a risk-free and successful financial life. Now, your host, Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar.
Hey, happy day, everyone. Welcome to episode 172 of the Bert Salazar Retirement Show. My name is Bert Salazar, and I am going to be your host today, as I am every week. The title for this episode is Pension Maximization Right for You? So for those of you that may not know what PenMax is, short for Pension Maximization, I'll go through some details regarding that. So obviously over the last 35 years or so, my specialty has been retirement distribution planning. And I particularly paid a lot of attention to the last 15 years, and that was exclusively what I've done since then. And the reason for that is that in the thousands of clients and individuals that I have met and companies doing, workshops and webinars and seminars and so forth, many of the questions that I receive have to do with retirement distribution planning. It's not so much as to climb the mountain to retirement, but is more important once you're on top of the mountain and now you're going to be coming down on the retirement distribution side, on the other side of the mountain. You want to make certain that the decisions that you make are going to be apropos and they're going to be adequate, for yourself, your family, and your business if you have any. So I want to kind of give you a little bit of background because I still see a lot of mistakes being made, not only with the people that listen to my podcast on a weekly basis and then they reach out, also to the webinar clients and the seminar clients that I contact on a regular basis, and even within my own client base. Although I have been preaching certain things of how to handle different financial decisions, some of my clients, they kind of see the door, but they just want to go through the wall, and you know what? It is what it is. But I can't help everyone. But I can try to save as many people as I can, and that's a challenge in the business that I'm in. That you keep preaching the financial word, and some people are going to understand it, they're going to agree with it, and they're going to move forward, and others are just not going to do that. So, what are some of the retirement challenges that I want to share with you today? And this is an episode that it would be very important for you to pay attention to, because hopefully it's going to open your eyes on a lot of different things and issues that, for many of you really haven't thought about. So what is, one of the main retirement challenges is, how to guarantee your retirement paychecks while reducing your tax liabilities through efficient tax planning. So it's not necessarily just getting a retirement paycheck, but also how you're going to reduce all of those eroding factors like taxes, inflation, stock market volatility, interest rate volatility, opportunity costs, propensity to consume. Some of you may be spenders, others may be savers, and then you're going to have an array of people in between. So, how do you get to do that? And that becomes a challenge from a retirement perspective. The financial world in America is quite simple. It's not very difficult. It is simple, yet by the same time and by the same token, is quite complex. How to create guaranteed retirement paychecks, how to create tax-free paychecks, and how do you manage the fatal four, the risk of living too long, or the risk of dying too soon, or the risk of living with a disability, or the risk of living with eroding factors, as I just walked you through regarding taxation and inflation and many of the other eroding factors I will talk about in the next few minutes. So if you look at the financial world through a telescope, it's very simple when you look at it. Now, when you get into the nitty gritty and now you instead of a telescope, you're going to start using a microscope, then it becomes a lot more challenging and more complex because of all the decisions that Americans have to make in preparation for retirement. I think from talking to, thousands of people over the last 35 years, I think the problem in America is that everybody knows the answer, but nobody knows the question. And that's a big challenge. And the internet has led us to everybody thinking that they have the answer. They think that when they go on the internet and they go to Google and they start looking for information, that they're doing research, all they're doing is they're gathering data. And they're gathering data from many different sources. And every source is going to give you more than likely a different outcome or a different resolution to whatever challenges you may be having at that time. But how do you take that information and apply it to yourself? That becomes a major, major problem. So you think you know the answer, but you just don't know what the questions are. Because there are going to be so many other questions that you're not going to be able to see just because of the fact that you're just trying to figure out the solution. Now, for instance, I talk about this often, and I do it in my webinars and seminars, and I have done podcasts on this. And there are 7 retirement questions that I feel are very important and critically important for each and every one of you to find an answer to. For instance, number 1, how old will you be when you run out of money in retirement? Because there's a very, very high probability that unless you've done some type of tactical planning, you're all going to run out of money before you run out of life. And if getting old is bad, getting old and being broke is even worse. The second question is, how much income will your retirement assets produce? And I think it's very important that you kind of figure that one out, because you need to know where you're going to be and how you're going to move forward by knowing how much income your retirement assets are capable of producing. And I'd rather you be conservative on that number than too aggressive, because things are bound to change on you from one year to the next. So you have to be careful with that question as well. The third question is, how much income do you need for your retirement lifestyle? Now, if you're going to retire at 65 or 67 or age 70, and you're not going to travel much, and you're going to stay in your neighborhood, and you're not a big spender, you may not need a lot of money, although you have to consider taxation and inflation along those lines, and that may require a little bit more, but it's not going to be that much. But if you're the type of person that wants to retire and you want to enjoy retirement, you have worked all of your life, and at the end of the day, you want to be able to show something for it, because the only thing you're ever going to take with you when you die are your memories. You can't take anything else but your memories. So now the income that you're going to need for retirement may be totally different. And then some of you have a different desired lifestyle. You want to live on top of the world, and that's okay. Kudos to you for thinking about doing that. But by the same token, how much income, how much gas is it going to take to maintain that retirement automobile moving forward into the future for 2-3 decades, perhaps even 4 decades? And those are things that are critically important to understand as well. Question number 4, how much will taxes impact your retirement income? And that's a critical one, because as taxes go up in the future, you're going to have to take a larger withdrawal percentage out of your retirement accounts in order to make ends meet, because you live on the net, you don't live on the gross. So that's important. Question number 5, how much of your retirement income is guaranteed? This is probably the most important question that you can answer for yourself and your family. Other than your Social Security benefits, what other assets do you have that are totally guaranteed? Question number 6, how can volatility impact your retirement income? If you have all of your retirement assets or the vast majority of your retirement assets in the stock market, there's going to be volatility. As a matter of fact, there's a market crash, just about every 5 years. Now, the last 10 years or so, it's been kind of weird because it's not normal. But for the most part, there's going to be a market crash every 5 years. And this is historical data. And on top of that, that market crash is going to last anywhere between 18 to 21 months. And the market crash on the average is about 39%. So all of a sudden there's a market crash. You have a lot of your retirement assets in the stock market, but now you need to maintain your standard of living. So now you're going to be taking distributions out of an account that has lost 10, 15, 20, 30, 39%, 40% in value. So now you're compounding that problem because it's going to be almost impossible for you to recover and get a high enough return on those assets to get you back to where you were prior to the crash. And then the last question number 7, is what percentage of your retirement assets are volatility protected? So because of the fact that volatility and sequencing of returns is going to be so critically important for you in order for you to maintain your standard of living, then I think it's important that you also know what percentage of your retirement assets are volatility protected. That regardless what happens with the stock market, your retirement income and your retirement assets will be fully protected. So that kind of gives you a flavor for all the things that all of you that are getting closer and closer to retirement need to think through. And you can't just go online and try to figure this out because it's not going to work. Because every individual is a different world, and you need to make certain that you're talking to a tax planner or someone who's a retirement strategist that can help you navigate all of these booby traps that are going to be facing you upon retirement. Now, what are also the realities of managing retirement assets? So we talked a little bit about the retirement challenges. We talked about the 7 retirement questions that hopefully have opened your eyes to what you need to do. But also, what are the realities of managing your retirement assets at the point in time of retirement? Because remember, the rules of engagement totally change. Prior to retirement, it was all about accumulation. It was all about how much money you could contribute, the consistency of contributions, and whatever rate of return you could get on your investments. When it comes to retirement, now those rules of engagement are going to change from accumulation to distribution. And the set of rules on the distribution are totally different. And many times you need to understand what they are. So what are the 4 major challenges or realities that all of you need to pay attention to when it comes to managing your retirement assets? Well, number 1 is longevity risk. No one knows when they're going to die. No one knows how long you're going to live. So once you enter retirement and you have whatever amount of money you have in your retirement accounts, they have to be able to last you a lifetime. Although I did say that for most of you, you're going to run out of money before you run out of life because you haven't done any proper retirement distribution planning. So longevity risk is very important. How long are you going to live? The average American is living into their mid-80s. More and more Americans are living into their mid-90s. As a matter of fact, whenever I do any type of tactical retirement blueprint, which is the type of work that I do with my clients as they're approaching retirement, I always put together 3 decades of retirement distribution planning. And I call the decades the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. And I've done podcasts on those as well. So I'm not going to talk about those, but in this podcast. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to plan for 3 decades in retirement. And I feel you're being conservative if you do so, but at least you've done better than if you only plan for 1 decade, or if you plan for nothing or no decades at all. So longevity risk is very important because people are living a lot longer today than ever before. And with that comes all kinds of economic liabilities that most of you have not really paid attention to. The second one is withdrawal rate risk. How much money are you going to take out of your retirement assets every year? Are you going to be taking too much? Are you going to be taking too little? What is the adequate amount? And how would you know? Because if you don't know how long you're going to live, and you're not doing proper longevity planning, then there's a very high chance that your withdrawal rate distribution risk is going to be all over the place because you just don't know. What if you want to take a trip, or you want to go on a long vacation to Europe? Or if you live in Europe, you want to travel to Asia, or you want to travel to North America. How much is that going to cost? Or you may be taking more money one year than other years, but then again, you'll never know. It'll be very nebulous for you and for your family to know the difference, because since you haven't done any type of planning, any type of longevity planning, you're actually not knowing, and you just don't know how much income you have to take from one year to the next in order to prevent you from running out of money at some point in time in the future. So the third reality of managing retirement assets is sequencing of return risk. And this goes hand in hand with the volatility that I talked about, especially during the 7 retirement questions that I shared with all of you. Volatility is very critical. Sequencing of returns is very critical. See, whenever you do any calculations for retirement planning, you take a number, you make a contribution, you do a hypothetical rate of return, and then you're going to get from point A to point B to a given number. But the world doesn't work that way, especially when you're in retirement, because when you're accumulating assets and you're climbing the mountain and you still have years before you retire, you know that they're going to be sequencing of returns. 1 year you're going to do better, 1 year you may do worse. But since you don't need those assets in order to maintain your lifestyle, you really don't pay much attention to that. And it really has no, it does no major damage to you, except for the 5 years preceding retirement. Once you're 5 years out from retirement, then now you have to pay attention to sequencing of returns. But prior to that, you're pretty much golden. Now, when you retire, and now you have to depend on those assets in order to generate distributions from 1 year to the next, or from 1 month to the next, as most of my clients get their retirement income, then sequencing of returns plays a major role. Because now you have to couple that sequencing of returns, or whatever the market is doing at the time that you're taking money out, with your longevity planning and your withdrawal rate risk. So everything goes hand in hand. And unless you've really thought through that, and you've done your math, and you've done your calculations, and you've taken your best case scenario and your worst case scenario, and then try to average them in between, then chances are you're going to fail miserably in your retirement life. And then the fourth reality that I want to share with you today is inflation risk and tax risk. So we've gone through longevity, withdrawal rate, sequencing of returns, and now inflation and taxation. Because inflation and taxation they're going to play a major role in every single financial decision that you make every single year of your retirement life. See, most of you are accustomed to just tax deferring everything. IRAs, 401ks, SEPs, pensions, put the money in pre-tax and allow the money to grow tax deferred. And you do that because you don't want to feel the pain of taxation from one year to the next. And that's well and good, although I don't agree with it. But when you're in retirement and now you have to take money out of those accounts, guess what? Now is time to pay the piper. So the IRS says either you pay me now or you're going to pay me later. And later is more than likely going to be more costly to you and your family because taxes are going to be increasing in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Unless you think that taxes are going to be lower than they are today, then maybe you're living in an alternate universe. And I'd like to be part of that because, that would be a nice world to live in. But the world doesn't work that way, so that's something you need to pay attention to. So inflation, look at inflation today in the United States. According to the CPI is 8.5%. By the way, if we were using the same CPI numbers that were being used in 1980, because the government knows how to play around with those numbers, inflation in the US would be north of 18% today. So don't let anyone kid you otherwise. Well, just take a look when you go to the grocery store, you're putting gas, it's a lot more than 8%. Or when you're paying for energy, it's a lot more than 8%. The 8.5% inflation rate in the US is the average of all the different products and services that are sold in the US. But when you really truly look at the true effective CPI rate, is much, much higher than that. So that means that if you're in retirement and you're taking money out, you're going to have to take an additional 8.5% because right off the bat, you're losing 8.5% of purchasing power in everything that you're acquiring. So those withdrawals from those retirement accounts are going to have to be higher because inflation is another form of taxation. And then on top of that, you have to add your tax liability based on your tax bracket. And most of you feel that, well, maybe I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket. No, you're not. The only time you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement is if you have been a total failure in your life. Because if you exceed certain distributions during retirement, up to 85% of your Social Security benefits are going to be taxable, and that would include for your spouse if you're married. Any distributions out of your IRAs are going to be taxable. Any distributions out of your 401ks are going to be taxable. Any distributions out of your traditional mutual funds are going to be taxable. Any distributions out of your CDs are going to be taxable. So all of a sudden, you're in retirement, you're earning you don't have any W-2 earnings or 1099 earnings anymore, yet just about every single dollar coming out of your retirement account is going to be totally taxed. Where do you think that's going to put you? And then factor the inflation tax on top of that, and now Houston, we have a problem. So how are you going to deal with all that? Now, at the very beginning, the title to this podcast was, Is Pension Maximization Right for You? And what I want to do is, I'm not going to go into a lot of details. Those of you that may want to learn a little bit more, feel free to reach out to me. You can send me an email or you can call me and I'll give you my information at the end, as I do every single week. But why is pension maximization so important for the average American? And the reason is that all financial products made in the United States have benefits and they also have flaws. So true efficient planning requires a reduction of flaws while increasing benefits. The major challenge that I see whenever I do an audit on a new client and they bring me all of their statements and all of the stuff that they have done is that every financial decision that they have made, and I would argue every financial decision you have made, has been from a microeconomic perspective. So you wanted to invest in retirement, you invested into an IRA or a 401k. You needed to protect your family in case of premature death, so you bought a term life insurance. You needed to invest to get a high rate of return, so invested into a mutual fund and so forth. Now, all of those decisions in themselves are not necessarily bad. But the problem is when you all of a sudden shift from, in my case, from doing an audit from a micro perspective to a macro perspective, then I want to see all the flaws inside of all those financial decisions and the pluses and the minuses along those lines. Because unless you're looking at your finances through a telescope, you're never going to be able to tell the difference. So pension maximizations allows, if you really think about it, for strategic design and product efficiency, which includes the combination of certain financial instruments that create overwhelming economic benefits not matched by any specific product. And that's where the understanding, the know-how, and the strategic approach plays a major role for Americans in retirement, because if you're able to get the best of certain products and match them together to be a suitable and efficient distribution program, then you're automatically going to be reducing the flaws that those individual products inherently have in themselves when they were designed by the insurance companies or the investment companies or the government when they put them together. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. If you have investments that are not creditor protected, so you have a lot of money in mutual funds, you have a lot of money in CDs, you have a lot of money in stocks and bonds and so forth, and they are not creditor protected, and you get involved into an automobile accident and you kill someone, the insurance company is going to tender their liability limits. But if the liabilities exceed the insurance carrier's liability limits, then now you're going to be personally responsible for those liabilities. So depending on the amount of assets that you have that are outside the protection of retirement distribution planning, then it may be a good idea to purchase an umbrella insurance coverage that not only will it cover you in your home, if someone drowns in your pool, or they have a slip and fall, or if you get involved in an automobile accident, and whatever that premium you're going to be paying for an umbrella policy, which is not a lot of money, that gives you the ability to protect a lot of those retirement assets that are not currently being protected. So just by understanding how products work and how they can complement each other, then now you're going to find yourself in a position that you would have increased those protections while reducing those liabilities. Another portion of pension backs, I'll give you one final one, is, for instance, a life insurance with an annuity as a combination distribution retirement vehicle. Because what happens? You're dealing with longevity. So you want to make certain that you don't run out of money until that time that you run out of life. Well, annuities are retirement products, and they're designed, if you do it properly, where you can annuitize the contract and you're going to get a retirement income for the rest of your life. Think of it like your Social Security benefits. That's an annuity. If you get a pension from an employer, whether it's a private employer or a public employer, that's an annuity. And you can also create your annuity distribution planning with your retirement assets. And that's all well and good. Now, if you want that to be an effective retirement annuity, then you want it to be a life income only, so it's going to pay you the very, very most. But upon your death, your survivors are not going to get anything, so that's not a good thing. Now, you could use a survivor benefit or something, and there are different variances to that. But when you use a survivor benefit, now the current income is going to be depreciating, it's going to go down, because now the insurance company has to factor upon your death income for that surviving spouse until he or she passes away. So what life insurance does, it kind of gives you the ability to marry or create that combination, that combo between the life insurance contract that gets paid at time of death and the annuity that will end at the time of death. So now, if you have it correctly, now you can annuitize a portion of your assets, have guaranteed income for the rest of your life, and the day that you pass on, that annuity goes away, but is immediately replaced by the death benefit proceeds from the insurance company, which are totally tax-free. And now the surviving spouse, he or she can take that death benefit that is tax-free and create their own annuity until the day they die. So by creating a marriage between products, you're creating pension maximization. And I go back to what I said at the very beginning, the challenge with most Americans and the challenge with most of you that are listening to me today is you haven't done your due diligence and you really haven't compared how can you generate the most amount of income. And by the way, when you annuitize a contract and you start getting retirement income under an annuity, you're actually receiving principal and interest. So you don't have to live off the interest alone. And by receiving principal, guess what that's doing? It is actually helping you offset the inflationary trends of inflation in the United States and throughout the world. I mean, I can go on forever. I do workshops that are 3-4 hours on retirement distribution planning. So I can do this forever, not in a 30-minute workshop. But for those of you that want to reach out to me, please feel free to reach out. And it's important that you understand this because this is going to determine whether you're going to succeed or fail in retirement. So if you want to reach out to me, you can call me, area code 305-304-4770, or you can send me an email at Bert, B-E-R-T, at bertsalazar.com, BERTSALAZAR.com. And always remember that my goal for you, from me, for you, and for your family is to kind of help you change the way that you see things, because when you change the way that you see things, the things that you see change. So once again, thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time, and I'll talk to you soon.